just want to call to order the Citizens Advisory Council meeting for February 10th. Thank you guys all for coming. Do we want to go around and do introductions?
So, hi, I'm Sabrina Nail. I'm the Ombuds with Frederick County Public Schools, and I help to address concerns and look to work with the community, collaborate, and look for options for next steps. And I'm also a liaison to this committee.
All right, good evening. I am Dr. Jamie Alavito, and I'm our Chief of Schools and Accountability. And with Dr. Marco's departure, I was assigned the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I'm excited to listen and learn tonight.
I'm Dean Rose. I'm your new board liaison. Thrilled to be here. I wasn't assigned, I chose it. I asked to be the liaison to this group. I've followed this group even before I was elected. I've followed this group for a long time and have actually attended some of the meetings back in pre-COVID. So excited to work with you all. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I'm Carly Ziegler, a member of the CAC, and I am here from the Middletown schools.
I'm Celeste McNeish. I'm from the Walkersville theater area. I have two boys in high school. And I sit on the policy committee as a non-voting member, so I always bring information from that group to this group and vice versa. So it's nice to be here.
I'm Lindsay Gonzalez. I am the chair. I have one child that goes to TG High in the Expressions program, and then we're in the Leonore feeder pattern.
I'm Brant Shalikashvili, full-time dad, part-time consultant. I have a second grader at Parkway Elementary, so the Frederick High School feeder. Love being here, actually.
Chris Brandt. I have a senior at TJ, and then I have two at Yellow Springs.
This is our
I'm secretary.
secretary.
Toughest job. Thank you for doing that.
It is. I know, exactly. It's very important.
Were you not here that meeting when you got?
You know, I have a hard time.
That is usually what happens. You know,
raised
the
my
person wasn't here.
Yeah, I raise my hand a lot. And I find
Just asking a question. I didn't mean to volunteer.
I'm president of like Clover Hill now, right? You know, so it happens.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the agenda, we don't have public comment today. We'll do board member comment, senior leadership comment, and then Celeste has a couple updates, and then we'll have a little bit of time for the discussion, and then we'll close. Okay, no public comment. Do we want to start with board member?
Well, we need to accept the minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I'm all over the place. Did everybody review the minutes from November 11th?
One tiny edit.
Yes.
My first name's misspelled.
Okay.
Other than that, I mean, since it's public record.
Well, I have
Your first name?
B-R-A-N-T. Go figure.
I'm like, what?
Go figure.
and my last name is Brandt, so I really should.
Oh my gosh.
Here we go.
That was it.
Now I understand. Yeah, your spell check probably just.
It just does that.
Everybody forgets my D in my name, so you know.
That's really
I
fun.
apologize.
No,
Other- anything
I don't care. It's just a matter of, since it's for the record.
Any other edits? No? Okay, motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Okay, great.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, now on to Celeste.
No, right now.
No, board member comment.
Okay. Well, I kind of used mine during the introductions, but I'm just kind of happy to be here. But I did bring you some. I wanted to bring you the roadmap for our policy committee of what's coming up for the next several months. So you'll get one more.
Does he have one? Pass it down.
Because I think this, particularly with Celeste serving on the policy committee with us, I think it's important for you all to see what's coming, and you can kind of do your own research on the FCPS website to see what the current policy is. Then as we get closer, usually, let's see, the Thursday before our policy committee meeting, these will be posted on board docs for anyone to see. Then you can go on there and actually see the suggested, what we call the red line version, which is suggestions for updates to the policy. So Thursday before these dates, you can look on there, you can look at all those policies on board docs, and you can see what's actually being recommended as changes. And all of these will be coming to the policy for initial review. So they first come to policy committee for initial discussion and review. Then we decide at policy if we're ready to forward it on to the board for first reading. Sometimes though, we're not quite ready yet. It's only been our first review. We might have some additional things we'd like added to the policy, and it might come back in a following month before it'll go to the board for first reading. And once it goes to the board for first reading, they can make their suggestions. They have two options as well. Their options are they can approve it to move forward to second reading, or they can ask that it be sent back to the policy committee for any updates that we've discussed during the meeting. If it's chosen to go to second reading is basically the final step. If it passes at second reading, it's immediately published policy and ready to go. If they send it back, then we'll have another discussion at policy. Any edits that might be made to it will be made, and then it'll go back again for a final reading to make sure everything's been taken care of.
So these are first?
These are actually prior to first reading.
Okay,
These are their first appearance.
I missed that part, okay.
That's right. These are their first appearance at the policy committee.
I'm with you, got it.
And a number of these may stay in policy for at least one more meeting before they would then go to the board. So,
I saw data security.
Yeah.
Based on the breach. I figured that one might stick around for a little review.
What do the letters mean? The I and the D and the A after?
So information, discussion, and action.
Okay.
So when there's an action is when the public can comment, if there needs to be or wants to be public comment. When there's an A there, otherwise it's just information and discussion, so that the policy committee can have an understanding and then give some direction so that staff can go back and look at some next steps. And then it normally comes back to policy committee for that action step at a later time.
as you can see near the bottom here, starting down at 426, 400, and all the ones below that, we anticipate there's not even an action plan for those. There's going to be so much discussion around those policies, we don't even foresee that we would vote to move them on for first reading. They're going to definitely come back to the policy committee for further edits and further discussion. But when you do see the IDA, the A means there is an option there. We don't have to, but there is an option that we would move it to the board for first reading.
Okay. This is very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But this is the kind of thing that we would very much appreciate your all's, what you hear in your feeder and provide it to us at these meetings. And then I'll share it with Celeste, and I can share it with the policy committee.
Can I just ask, ideally, when do you want the input before it comes to the
It
public?
really doesn't matter. I mean, I think before, during, it's very helpful. I think our next meeting is May, is that right?
12th.
May 12th. So that's actually a good time. We'll get through the first policy meeting on that large chunk of policies there. And then I don't think it's any secret that policy 443 and policy 444 are going to elicit a lot of comment. Even for a policy committee meeting at 9:30 in the morning, we're expecting a full house of people that will want to share or comment. So we would look forward to your input as well, what you're hearing in the community, and we'll certainly take that into consideration during our discussions. And we really expect the same thing out of the policies that we'll be starting on in June on 425 flag display and salute and the religious expression policy. So we're expecting all, and that is actually the reason you see February and March, there's quite a bit on there. We intentionally cleared the schedule for those 4 policies right there because we knew there's not going to be room for much discussion on others. And we don't meet in April. That's just why. The policy committee doesn't meet in April, so that's why we skip April.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any questions?
Okay. Moving on to senior leadership comments.
All right, I guess that's me. So I wasn't really sure what you were all accustomed to, so I have some notes, and I was just going to touch on a few things that are the happenings right now in FCPS, kind of front of mind. As you know, we're in the budget process, and our board is anxious to meet on Wednesday to really look at the budget and say, is this the budget that we want to send forward to county government? With our request. And I would just stress that advocacy is so important, not just with our board, but with local government. We had a leader at one of our leadership meetings recently talk about the person who writes the check. She said that's really where we need to do a lot of advocacy. So we're muddling through that process right now, and we're here to support questions that they have about what's been requested. We just got our survey results, and we're going to be presenting, I think it's the second meeting in February, is our survey results with the board. But an initial look at the survey results, they're very positive. Our family and community engagement data is 80 to 90% favorable across the board, across domains. So I wanted to share that with this group. Our community is very supportive of our schools and our school system, and that's just something we should be really proud of, that strong favorability. Now, I would say every school is different, and so in my office, I have the directors who oversee the school principals most directly, and this is that time of year where they go out and they look at the results together and they look at how their school improvement plan ties to the results that they're getting, and then what adjustments might need to be made. So we really, when you hear Dr. Dyson talk about being a continuous improvement school system, we truly are, and it is very fluid and dynamic. So that's happening right now. Another thing I'm really excited about is our division leaders have spent the past couple of years really getting in and talking with students. So last year we did focus group interviews with students, and this year we're doing shadowing of students, P to 12 across the board, a sampling of schools and classrooms. And we're not there to observe teachers. It's not necessarily about what the teachers are doing. It's about what is the experience for our students with our curriculum resources, our materials, what is the level of rigor that we're requiring, and are we on point? We talk about being an evidence-informed school system, and so we're paying attention to what we know should be happening in the classroom as it relates to literacy instruction. There was a theme from parent survey data, positive, wondering about, are my kids with the most advanced, who are the most advanced learners getting what they need in the classroom? And so that's something we're really honing in on as we visit. And then we use that information to inform our work throughout the spring and into the summer to make sure we're prepared next year. So that is exciting work that we're doing. And then it is staffing and scheduling season at FCPS. So, you know, if you have a student, they might have filled out an interest form about if they're in the secondary level, what classes they want to take. We've given out staffing to all of the schools based on our existing model and formulas. And folks are working on those schedules already for next year. January and March is a huge time of really prepping for next year. So that's what's happening for us right now, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are those visits, do they occur in the special education programs as well?
They do. They do. And actually, Dr. Bingman and her team are doing kind of a unique audit type visit with schools with specialized programs, just to make sure that what they're looking for is suitable and aligned to what the goals are that they have. So their focus is very strongly on inclusive education, and making sure that we're maximizing the use of all staff in our programs and really getting kids what they need. So their visits are slightly different.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much. Now it's your turn. Policy committee.
All good, yeah. This is a great list of all the upcoming policies and what they are. I think that's, the numbers don't mean a lot to a lot of people until you look at it. So this is great to have a list. And then that can it's great to be able to look at that and see if there's anything that really jumps out. Some of the policies that we talk about are very quick because, for example, the copyright policy. Well, there's a federal law, there are state laws, there's really not a lot to discuss with copyright. It's pretty clear, right? Black and white, that's pretty easy. Some of the other ones are not as much. So we had discussed a couple things in the last meeting, but really whatever is on this list that anyone's interested in, I think we should open for discussion. One thing that came up though in policy committee last meeting was 413, which is actually not on the list until the 26th of March. But that is the family and community partnerships policy. And in our discussion, I think at first some of us did not understand that, who are you talking about with a partnership? Is it like the business partnership like we have with the YMCA, that has the after school program and the before school program at a lot of our schools? That's a company, right? But also we were talking about family partnerships and the relationship that, I know at least two of us are PTSA presidents, booster leaders, and we have those partnerships in the different groups in whichever schools we're in. There's a million different ways to be involved. So those are partnerships too. So I think as the policy committee discussed, we sort of went towards a thought that maybe we need to split it up and talk about it in two different ways. Like one is more of the family involvement partnership with the community, like people, and then the other part would be the partnership with different companies and different entities. Am I summarizing that about accurate? Yep. So we thought it would be a good idea to have a discussion here, and we can look at the policy that's up there, and that's how it's written now. This was kind of an initial discussion that we had. So we're going to go back, and there'll be a red line version in March after they kind of take a look at it. So anyway, I think that would be a good place to start for discussion, but honestly, any other things that you guys see on there would be great to kind of add in.
Short one.
Yeah, it is really short, and I think that was part of the thing too, because we started talking about all the different things that it might mean, and then we're like, well, what about this and what about that? And so I think we're really probably going to just dissect it and, maybe make two or at least have different sections covering because I feel like the way it's written now is more of a community focus, but we were really talking about the business partnerships and some of the companies that might approach FCPS to say, hey, can you endorse us as, we're your partner. Well, are you our partner or not? And so what is that definition? So I feel like that's kind of a little bit gray in there too. And so anyway, that was an interesting conversation that we had and, thought it would be good to bring back here for our discussion as well.
And this is a great example of, you see it's on here for March. That's a great example of a policy that was on last month for discussion. And now it's back with legal, and they've taken our discussion that we had, and now it'll come back in March with what we call our red line version with suggested changes from the conversation that we had. And that's a perfect example of one that we will decide, does it need more work at the policy committee level, or is it ready to be forwarded to the board for first reading? See what the board thinks about the expansion of it. And this is a great example of one that I think if you scroll down, so that one was that's pretty new. That was reviewed in 2020, so it's only been 4+ years, which is pretty good because we've had some that were a decade or more they hadn't been reviewed. So that one's actually pretty good. That was revised 9/9 of 20. So That's actually pretty good. But it does, we're getting, and I'm sure Dr. Alvito can talk to this even more too, is that we're getting, because of the competitive nature of grants now for partners, we're getting more and more requests for letters of support. So that's probably something we need to address in our policy. And then we, it says family and community, so we probably want to address more the PTA side. I think that we talked a lot about that, and just more family engagement.
No, I think splitting it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's two completely different ideas and.
And we discussed too about how it really varies depending on your building, in terms of the partnerships that you have within the building. For example, I had another meeting this afternoon. I sit on the school improvement committee for Walkersville High School as a PTSA person.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that was, I didn't know what I was getting into with that at all, but it's one of those things where you're like, oh my gosh, so we did talk about the survey data and stuff like that, but we get invited as PTSA to all kinds of things, just at our schools. And I also get involved with the other schools that my kids went to because of all of this. And just, we've done a lot as a feeder pattern. So we have regular meetings with our presidents just to talk about what's going on in our community as a whole. How can we support each other and help the new ones, so that's been great. But discussing like how different it is each building. I mean, I've been in 4 different school buildings, right? So you have different leadership and you have different teachers, and the community is always different. And who preceded you in your role also kind of plays a piece in that.
Yeah. The leadership of the school definitely dictates the tenor of the community engagement piece. And we've had some changes, and before my time even living here, and so there's still the community grappling with, we were allowed to do it back then, or the other issue we see a lot is we're one school district, but each is allowed to do their own thing. And so when there's that lack of uniformity, it causes some tension between the other schools, even in our feeder pattern. But I mean, and you could see everything on social media too, so that doesn't help, right? Well, my kids got to do this at that school and why couldn't? So I think that community engagement piece is critical, and I think it's a matter of what are the expectations of like the PTSA and all of those groups and the leadership of that building. And that seems a little blurry at points.
I would agree. I think some of the programs are like wildly different.
Yep.
It does cause some difficulty. I was curious, the source documents about volunteers seems like these 2 things. That seems odd to be in here. Should that be a 3rd thing?
Those are regulations, which are
so that feed
from the
into
operations side. They take our policy and then they develop an operation that is the application of what we would like to see.
So I think
We're the what and they're the how.
Yeah.
That's
I think volunteers were looked at as part of that partnership.
The community.
And so how does that connect? And so the referencing those was,
And you'll probably see a even lengthier, as we get into it on the red line, you'll see we're starting to actually lengthen our source documents for people to hyperlink to see where we got our ideas and where our ideas went.
So there's been a few mentions of splitting this. And if that is calling out sections in the policy, that makes sense to me. I worry about bifurcating or trifurcating this because at some point, as written, this policy doesn't really tell me anything other than it takes a village. Cool. So we have a policy that is, it takes a village. Talk to me about the entities in that village. And to me, the policy is, when it comes to volunteering and the way that it helps to build and support the community of our school X, if it's the way that we engage with local businesses like Ken's Automotive sponsoring the Parkway, you know, and the Pacer, cool. If it's whatever those things are, to me, it's figure out what the point is, and then the entities that do that. But if you split it, reviewing it every 4 years isn't going to be enough, because they're just going to start doing. You're going to lose sight of what the thing is you're trying to solve, and you're going to have a policy for engagement with a local business or engagement, and you're going to forget the why. Why are we doing this? And it's because it takes a village. So I like the idea of having discrete conversations about it in the document, but the idea of splitting it concerns me just simply from keeping track of it.
So maybe having like a section, different sections
Yeah.
within the same.
Because if you go into this and you're like, and the policy statement is, we understand or we believe that it is these 11 entity groups or 2 or 3, who cares? To do this job that we think is important enough to have a policy that we're gonna keep track of. And then, chapter 1, like, and attack it that way, because again, having dealt with policies that have tentacles like that, it gets really hard. And it's also a way of, when you get down to that source document, you just cut 5 off the list because you don't have the related one that's almost exactly the same, but for volunteers or.
Yeah.
So, it's covering the topics and keeping it administratively simple.
Almost wondering if unpacking the PTA national standards could help a little bit. That's the framework that we're saying is important that we want to work on. That might give us a little more to understand what it is the expectation is, what is the vision.
And also an intelligent point to articulate, do we want to add to that? Because we've admitted this is the floor.
Yes.
We don't know what this, maybe it's the floor and the ceiling, great. But yeah, unpacking that a little bit so that people understand what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it.
Great input.
We did discuss the PTSA standards a little bit, so during that meeting, I looked it up to see where that was in terms of editing, and it looks like it has been revised pretty recently. I did see the date of 2008, not recent, because that's when my 17-year-old was born, but since then, it has been updated. So there are little very helpful boxes that tell you, here's the changes in each section. It's a very long document. I've not read the whole thing. But it is in there, so there are it's a lot. So unpacking it, I think it's important to look in there and take some things from it to add some congruency across the board of what we're doing.
I mean, maybe to Brian's point, doing like some sort of outline of all the things that this would encompass first, and then seeing if it needed to be divided or to just remain the same, because if it's
Because it
that
could.
much, but then you also don't want like a 100-page document about grants and parents and communities and all the things that, so I think maybe doing some sort of outline of, again, with the point of this, because, I think it is hard to tell with just.
And that's exactly the point of the policy. You would see a more extensive in-depth in the regulation.
Yes.
Yeah, I just think that if we're gonna write a document that says go follow the regulation.
Right.
It should tell me a little bit more.
Yes.
So that I don't have to go through every single regulation to understand.
Right.
Yeah, the more clear we
Yeah.
can be in the policy, certainly the easier it is for us to say, what do we need to be more direct to tell schools, this is what it looks like.
And then, again, like if you're trying to get public input, you're gonna have a more informed public. Because they're gonna look, a lot of people are gonna look at this and go, I don't even know what it is, I'm not gonna pay attention to it. But it does actually really matter.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is usually the last place parents stop. They go to policy, and they rarely actually go down to the hyperlink and click on the regulation. So it is important that the policy does a good job of
Says enough.
outlining.
Yeah, like, give me a good executive summary.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And why it's important. Yeah.
Celeste, can you get on board? Can you jump on board? real quick?
Yeah.
I can do it from here, I think.
Yeah, there you are. if you just go to our next meeting, the Board of Education meeting, and go to the agenda. And if you'll just click on, scroll down a little bit. There it is, 439, dress code. Click on that, and then you can click, there you go, red line, right there. This will just give you an idea of what, there you go. This is what, once it leaves policy and goes to the board, this is what it looks like.
And this is my favorite format. So the first policy meeting I sat through a couple before I joined, so to figure out what I was getting myself
This
into.
was a big change that,
Yeah.
that we went to, and it's really helpful. And of course, obviously, the red is deletions, the line through, and then the blue are things that we have discussed and added.
This is my entire life as a government employee.
There's a reason I quit what I used to do.
I will let anybody do anything unless it's like this.
This is a pretty lengthy one here. Like I said, this is, there you go. There's a lot of additions.
And there's purple also.
There is. Those were even additional changes after it came back to us the second time. But that just gives you an idea of what you'll see when you go on scouting around.
Okay, so are you good with this one? 443 or 118?
No, what do you guys want to do? 118 is, hold
Oh,
on.
I don't know, I'm looking at the sheet.
Did you say 118?
118.
Oh, personal mobile devices, we didn't finish this last time.
Oh, yeah, we did not.
And then 443 is, are we gonna talk about this one today?
118 is going to the board. And so at our
Okay, so
last
this is the-
CAC meeting, we had talked about
Yes.
gathering information
Okay.
from our communities about the personal mobile device policy.
Okay.
Does anybody have any information to share?
I mean, personally, you'd like to share. Do you know where we stand? Do you know what we're piloting right now in schools?
I don't.
Okay, no devices in elementary and middle school. They're off and away all the time.
Yes.
At high schools, they're off and away during instructional time at the discretion of the instructor. But they can use them in the
That's where we-
hallways and they can use them during lunchtime.
At the discretion of the, where things got hung
Mr.
up
yeah.
here last time.
Yeah, Mr. J was kind of giving
Yeah.
us the teacher perspective of that.
Yeah, and there's substantial disagreement on the board about that. I'm a hardliner. I actually researched, I don't know if you, the Yonder bags, have you heard of the Yonder locking bags? I actually researched the Yonder bags. That is actually where I'd like to go, but it would cost us $1 million up front to purchase them, and then it's a 20% loss each year, so $200,000 a year to maintain them.
And those
In
are the
our budget situation.
Yes, great.
Those are pouches that, everyone gets a pouch. And we would obviously do it at the high school level, so that's the pricing that we got. It's a locking pouch, and as soon as they come through the front door, they have to drop their phone in their pouch that they carry with them all the time, and it magnetically locks. And they can't get in it for any reason other than there would be a number of unlocking methods. And like I said, we couldn't go here, but where teachers might have the magnetic unlocking device in their classrooms, just in case an emergency they want to unlock. But usually what the company recommends is there are just unlocking stations at the exits, so that when they're ready to leave at the end of the day, they just slap it on there, pouch opens up, they get their phone out. And it's been done pretty widespread throughout the country with great success. There's actually, right now that I'm aware of, there are 2 districts in the state of Maryland that are doing it, but they're very small districts. One of them only has 1 high school. So the cost to them is substantially less than us, but they are using them. Obviously, the company, Yonder, sells it hard.
Sure.
But the people they directed us to talk to and get references from have raved about the success rate and the difference they've seen in the environment. And some of the districts were much larger than ours. So, but they've raved about the difference in the mood within their schools once they lock the phones away. And so but right now, we can't go down that road right now. We can't, it's not a budget-friendly option right now. So we're still having some discussion around, particularly around the, at the discretion.
That's,
Yeah, the enforcement.
I tend to, despite having more technology in front of me than I really should, I also tend to be a bit of a hardliner about this. I'm like, if it is not needed in that space, why the heck is it? I used to work at the Pentagon. My phone got locked in a box before I got to go sit at my desk. Like, hardline, it's okay, you're not gonna die.
I think it's more, I mean, personally, I would think it's safety of like if something happens, let the kids being able to have access to their phones.
And I think where I fall on
Like,
that
it
is
could be a way
somehow I
when you're
survived to
locked up,
52
but it's-
years old, and when I was a kid, my mom could always get a hold of the school.
Well-
I think it's a what we're used to thing.
I think it's also, where this is not 50 years ago, and it's not, you know, I mean, we're dealing with different challenges than we did,
Sure.
you know, back then. You know, in a whole variety of ways. I mean, there's not, like they didn't even have cell phones back then, so you didn't have an option. But I think, you know, as far as the school shootings and, you know, I mean, I think also there needs to be some personal responsibility for, like my phone is sitting here, I'm not on it, like,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I think learning how to use a device. and,
That I
like,
absolutely
and
agree
being
with.
responsible of like, okay, I mean, there should be consequences, like kids shouldn't be, and that I think is where we got last time with Mr. J, because then it puts it on the teachers. I think he was actually kind of leaning the other way, but I think it does, you know, it's balancing putting too much on the teachers versus like also teaching the kids, like responsibility, and that you can't sit there on your phone during class, but then, you know, that kind of safety component as well.
So I can see it that way as well. And then the other argument that, well, the school is not responsible to teach students how to use their phone properly. So I've heard both. And then also, you know, the fact of enforcement, and we talked about the policy. And now, I know I've seen, personally, some teachers are very good at making sure students' phones are away, there's consequences if they're not. Other teachers are giving them an assignment to look up on their phone. So the enforcement was what was really the biggest issue. And again, with our own students and their friends, they're all over the board. With the parent, I think we would be hard pressed to have parents in agreement, because you do have some parents that are the hardliners, like, yes, please, give us a good reason to keep these phones at home. And then you have other parents where I know I've personally encountered who demand that their child has their phone at all times. Their child is high anxiety without their phone in their presence, things, you know, and these type of issues that are going to be hard to.
Yeah, the feedback we got from the districts that used the bags, locked them up. They admitted the first semester was hell. It was very tough. There was a lot of
I think
anxiety.
any hardline policy, whether it's the bags or.
There was a lot of anxiety on both students, parents, everyone. There was a lot of anxiety, but they've all said to a person, to a district, that after they got through the initial semester, it was a game changer for them. That it really changed how their district functioned, and it also took that policing mechanism away from teachers. Teachers
That's
don't have it, and I don't know, you could
That I get
speak to
hung
this
up.
too.
It's
We
not.
really, I mean, there's a reason we took away bring your own device, is for security. In reality, we really don't want teachers asking kids to do work or look up things on their phone. Everyone has a device. We're one for one at the middle school and high school level. So everyone already has a device. So they really shouldn't be looking up on their phone something for class.
We've heard from teachers, because before we did this practice, standard operating procedure for cell phones, the team talked to students, and they talked to principals, and they talked to teachers. And there are teachers who said, you know, kids will scan a QR code that I'm using, you know, tech heavy lessons from the pandemic, and so they'll use that to scan a QR code, or they'll take a picture of their homework. The homework's up, and the kids find it to be helping with executive functioning. candidly, maybe using their calendars and such on their phones. I think this one will be interesting because I've seen no less than 4 pieces of legislation that have come through. And so at this time of year, when session is in, we do fiscal notes for the different bills. Now, I don't think it's going to say anything that we're not already doing. It just kind of encourages
It's actually not,
encourages us to have a policy, you know, around cell phones. And I think it's discouraging the use of cell phones in schools. And so I think anything we would come up with, we wouldn't contradict anything. So,
All 4 bills that I've looked at, we're pretty much already meeting what their expectation is.
Anything else?
And I'll add this, and again, it's just counter argument. We actually, during our presentation, we had a sheriff's deputy come and speak to us about cell phones. And he related that nationally, there is a push among departments. They would prefer during say a mass shooting, they would prefer students not have access to their phones because it clutters the communications that they're trying to have in order to save lives. That was exactly what he said. It interferes.
The shooter's incident down at Navy Yard years back, because of the number of people who were trying to call somebody that they loved to tell them it was okay, it shut down the ability to respond to the active shooter.
And then there's
That is
misinformation,
high risk.
directs police in the
And
wrong
trying to-
direction.
And this is the hard part, is trying to balance those equities, like it.
100%.
Yeah, because I think you could find other school shootings that balance the other way. So, I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's where it,
Yeah.
you know, it is definitely very difficult and people get very passionate.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, I love the little bag thing. It's too bad they were cost like $1 million, but it seems like ridiculous. Is there not like some more cost?
Let's talk about fundraising. in
$25 a
schools.
piece.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, 'cause that seems like then they can have it with them. There's a mechanism for walking it. You know, that seems like that kind of covers all of the bases.
And they even give Velcro, so the kids don't get singled out to those that have it on their 504 plans.
Yeah.
Diabetic children they get a Velcro one that looks just like everybody else's, and they're the only ones that know theirs is Velcro and they get it in it. So they have a lot of experience with it, so. Yeah.
Personally, I love the idea.
That's a great
Because the price, like, it's
That's
reasonable.
it. I mean, I'm a proponent. I did a lot of research. They've been a vendor at our national convention both years that I've gone, so I've spent a lot of time with them, been on their website, talked to their sales guys, been all over me.
I spent time not talking to their salespeople, but
Yeah.
I understand the
Yeah.
product, and it is very good.
Just right now in our current financial status, it's way down the list. So we are unfortunately putting it on our administrators and our teachers to be the police officers of something that we're coming up with. But this is something that's pretty much a state, because it came from the ZAM, which is the Superintendent's Association. They kind of all came together and came up with a pretty consistent one that we're all kind of piloting right now. And once we have this policy in place, regulation will jump in. It won't be much different than what we're already doing. But I've heard, I'll have to admit, I've heard some failures and some successes, but I've heard some failures already. You know, it's tough. Kids are conditioned. It's tough, and teachers are frustrated that they can end up spending 5 or 10 minutes of instructional time just getting the kids to put their phones away.
I think I would kind of ask the question, not necessarily of you, but just of the policy, is would the policy look different if you were implementing the bags than the policy that you're writing today? Because I would submit, if you're going to play hardliner, that the policy, the bag is just an implementation of hardline, and thus write the policy as it, so to me, that's just an implementation method. And
Yeah.
so I guess I will be curious to see as this matures.
Yeah, because we are getting some feedback that there are some that don't like the fact that at the high school level they have access, they're allowed to access their phones in the hallways and at lunch. So we're getting some feedback on that. But again, we're asking a lot of our administrators to police that between class, at lunch. But you know, it's become, one of the notorious things now is filming fights.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, those happen at lunch and in the hallways, so. So we've had some come to us and say, don't.
Yeah.
Off and away. We'll see where we end up.
I think it's interesting too, just before we leave the topic of technology in general, it's just like anything else. Like you mentioned when you went to work at the Pentagon, and I have friends that work in different agencies that, you know, you turn in your phone and it goes in a box, and so they'll call me from the parking lot at 6:30 and then I'm okay, bye, and you know. And that's your work culture, and that's what you did. So that was the rule where you went, but that wasn't the rule at your house. And you go to your house, and it's a different rule. And I feel like sometimes as a school system, well, you're coming to school, and so this is the rule at school. Certainly, all the rules in all 48,000 students' homes are different than the rules that we have in our schools, right? So to me, when I'm in the schools with our students and our teachers, I feel like it's important for our kids to understand, you know, and I always tell my kids, different rules, different parents, different kids, right? So you go to somebody else's house, you follow their rules. Like, I don't, you know, if they come to my house, they follow my rules. And they're in my car, we don't use cell phones in my car. So I will say that. And the kids are like, what? And these are teenagers, because my kids are 17 and 14. But you know what? After the first 5 minutes, the boot camp part, they're laughing and talking, and that's where the inside jokes, like, and that's why we parents and older adults feel like this is what we're missing if we're not doing that. But it's different rules, different places. And I think it's important when you get a job, you have a rule, you know, and this is what your policy is, and you're not going to be sitting at McDonald's on your phone when you're trying to be a cashier, right? They probably have a rule for that. So we can have a rule at school too. And it is a lot. Our teachers already have way too much to deal with. So, I mean, I hate that it's on them in the first place. But I do think it's important for our student culture to understand when you go to school, this is what you do. When you go home, this is what you do.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's the expectation in teaching that responsible use of devices versus then you just throw them into high school and then they're allowed to have it a lot more, and then everybody's filming things that they, you know, I mean, I almost think it's better to start, you know, maybe there's one rule for 6th grade and 1 grade, you know, and you kind of earn that privilege.
That is part of our thinking, is that it's off and away at all times at elementary and middle school. And so part of the thinking has been that we will condition our middle schoolers that this is the way it is. And as they come up the ranks, that we'll be able to transition our policy in a few years, that it's always going to be all off and away. Because they will have been conditioned since elementary school.
Yeah.
You just don't use your phone at school.
Yeah.
You know, right now we're fighting freshmen through seniors that have been using their cell phones since whenever they got one. and so we're fighting that. Our hope is that we're going to begin that conditioning process, that we'll see it
So they would be able to
less
keep
and
it
less.
with them, but then it's just known that it's off and
Off and away in their
that makes perfect sense.
in their backpack.
I think because of where we started with just this year, if we shift to not allowed it in high school classrooms, a step to take. And I think there's so much research out there about the negative effects of our teens and using cell phones and addiction to the cell phone and all kinds of other issues. I think as adults, we just kind of miss.
It's kind of disingenuous that if we don't strengthen a policy, and then also the fact that we're part of, our district is part of a class action lawsuit against Facebook. So if we just give them free reign on their phones, you know, it's kind of disingenuous that we joined that lawsuit, you know? So, yeah.
Are there also, do we also have access to statistics about some of these schools that do have completely away about the academic success of these policies?
Oh, Yonder's more
That's-
than happy to share all the successes
You're always going to have
of-
those parents who are, well, not my kid.
of
you know,
dozens and
if you
dozens
say, oh, but
of
my kid
school,
could
yeah.
do better
Yeah.
with this, then that's more of an incentive.
But it is more around the social aspects within the schools, is what they're seeing. Is just fewer fights, drug use, drug sales, we had the police officer, that's how they communicate. Meet me in the bathroom at this exact time, and that way it's easy to make that transaction very quickly. Or I'll meet you in the hallway in 10 minutes and I'm gonna whoop your, we see that too.
All right, anything else? Did you have any
Sorry,
other-
you guys can stick around as long as you,
No, that's okay.
unless you guys want to come with me.
No. That's a hard pass.
We can fly down and meet you there.
People do that too.
See, there you go.
My daughter wants to go to Disney World, and I'm like, I will send my sister-in-law with you.
There you go.
Well, there's a lot of interesting things that are coming up, and I think, I think we need to talk about the 443 and the 444 also, just because I want to. One of the purposes of our committee is really to go out into the community and to get the feedback and to talk to our different groups, not just the circles that we run in. Circles that I run in are the ones that are already over involved and do too many things. And I've known them forever, and so I'm always trying to push where else can I go and discuss with different people. So I don't know a lot of parents of younger kids, so when I go visit the elementary schools, that's where I can tap into groups that are not in my circle. But just to, first of all, to kind of educate a little bit about what the policies are, how to read them, where they are, why they live here, and then what we do with them. Like, why do we want to know? Like, yeah, I want to know what you think. Whether you agree with me or not, I want to know what you think. And I'm going to bring all of that back here because we have a humongous school system full of a huge amount of students, over 48,000 students, right? In so many different, we've got city schools and country schools and everywhere in between, and we've got such an amazing cross-section of our country right here in our county, which is so amazing to me. So it's really important that we represent all the different groups that we come from, and then within those communities also to get those perspectives. So when we talk about a policy, we're like, okay, this is the policy, this is what it says, board, the FCPS wants to discuss it at the board meeting or at the policy committee meeting. We want to know what you guys really think about it. Like, tell me why you don't like it or you do like it, or why do you think we should not split it up or we should. Like, that's really, really important when we go out and talk to people about all these different things. And a lot of these things, a lot of people that I talk to do not care about at all because it's boring. I mean, honestly, like, I've been involved in the school system since, for 15 years almost. And I never really looked at the policies much before I started getting involved at the county level because I didn't really need to. I didn't care. Like, it just didn't matter to me. But the reason that it is relevant is important, and it's not just because something's in the news or because something's a hot topic. It's because these are all things that matter to our county and to our school system as a whole. And this is the framework for why we do what we do out there in the buildings. So I think it's important to communicate that out too. But especially when you've got these things that are, really controversial, you have to respect everybody's perspective and bring all of that to the table. And if you go out and everybody says one thing, well, bring that back. That's really important to know. Or if you've got people that are split, bring that back. Those are all important things too. Sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the oil, but the other four that didn't squeak, they're still there too. So it's really important to represent everybody.
I just want to ask, just among the group, if anybody's had a good amount of success in pushing this stuff out and getting response. Because that's been the hard part is, you can put it in our PTA newsletter and things like that, but it's getting meaningful responses.
It's been high school, no. I mean, my wife's on the PTA there, there's nobody involved. It's sad a little bit. The elementary school, sort of, but they feel like a lot of this, what we're talking about, doesn't affect them at the moment. In the middle school, they go off topic. Overcrowding. We're not overcrowding. Which everybody's annoyed by. But so I don't. it hasn't been really that focused. Or there's been some, especially with 443, that has been like volatile a little bit, and just like the community that we know. Vastly different opinions. Vastly different opinions. So that's, but it hasn't been very like rah-rah. Like I've tried, but
See, when I even try to broach some of these, you know, especially some things that can be like, political, then it's like, oh, don't go there. In our PTA meetings, for example. But so I'm trying to think of other creative avenues to get outside, you know, those typical circles. And
What you might do is that, I think what's great about this committee is you do have some bit of anonymity. Unlike policy committee, this is going to be on our agenda. The board meeting, it's on our agenda. There is no being anonymous. But through this vehicle, you offer that to people that you're talking to. They can speak anonymously and voice their opinion. And you can as well at this meeting, because that's the agenda. So no one knows to come in 3 weeks or 6 months that you're gonna be just. So I think that's one of the nice things about this committee, is that you're able to go out into the community and give those people a voice without them having to have their name on the public comment list.
yeah, I agree.
So, and we actually, and what I would like to see is maybe we could work in conjunction. We have a new liaison that's gonna be working with the PTSAs. And maybe we could also work together to strengthen that relationship too, between CAC and the PTSAs.
That'd be helpful.
And,
Who is that?
it's Janie Monnier.
Okay.
Yeah, she's PTSA president, and is where she was, right?
Yeah.
So,
Elementary?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So she has a lot of experience with it, so she's our new liaison with them, so maybe we could kind of make sure we're merging those points.
Yeah, I think too, and it's sometimes you know, I think when I first started on this committee, I thought, oh, I need to put out like surveys, and I need to get, you know, we're gonna get all these people to come talk to me. They're not.
You're still waiting, right?
Still waiting. But it is more almost sometimes, you know, your individual one-on-one discussions, or you know, we're having a luncheon for our teachers in the staff lounge. They talk to me. Like I don't talk to them because that is their sacred time. So I stand in the back, I serve the food, and I leave. But you know, they'll come and talk to me if they want to chat about something, and so then I'll just kind of, you know, discuss about that and kind of get the feel for what's going on. And the same with, you know, our students, and I'm involved with athletics and talking to those parents. Wholly different group than like the music parents. And you know, then we've got the academic, like the honor societies and stuff, and then we've got our special education department, and we work a lot with those students. Like, so all these different, it's a cross section of people, and sometimes it's just a matter of your framework of, I need to absorb and get some input from people, and I'm just gonna casually put that out there and be like, hey, you know, did you hear we're talking about this policy? Like, do you know what that means? Or, you know, what do you think? Like, and it's okay to do that too. And every person's opinion matters, and a lot of those people would never come and speak or even email anyone about what they think. But everyone thinks something. So, you know, it's a non-traditional, you have to kind of find a back way in sometimes to get that information, because the surveys, no one's gonna, I would love it if anybody would read any of it. Anybody.
well, that's why I was just asking, like any best practices, like just.
That's
trying
what I
to
do.
those, Yeah.
Yeah, it's more casual and just kind of like, you know, let's talk. And after you do that for a while, people know that you're doing this. Like, people will know that you're doing this. And so then they might say, hey, you know, are you guys talking about this right now? Because, and that's kind of cool. Yeah.
Someone else recommended previously that they would go in the car rider line and get there early, and then just start going down the line and start talking. It's a way to get a random sampling of people, especially at the elementary school level. You know, you're there an hour early, and then you just start.
And there are other people there an hour early too, so you
Oh,
can.
yeah. Same one every
I
single.
drive by there, I'm like, what are you guys? Yeah.
So that segues right into any comments for any other things for discussion for everybody?
One thing that keeps bubbling up in the back of my mind, and we talked about it took was AI policy. And waiting on somebody to tell us what we're supposed to think about. So I worry that we don't have, not that it's going to be a panacea and it's suddenly going to either solve or make problems all go away or problems all start. But given the fact that the way, the state of that industry today, it's pretty much just an accelerant. If you know nothing, it will help you know even less faster. And if you're really smart, like, there's just so much unknown, and the power in that black box of the algorithm, I think if we and the rest of the board are not thinking about it in the very near term to at least, if not have a policy, have a position on what we need a policy to be doing. And I think if we made it to the beginning of the next school year and we didn't have an opinion from, we would be very sorely lacking.
I can share with you that we're keenly aware that it's already being used.
Sure.
And so, there has been a work group, because we appreciate when the board takes a stance and has a policy, but in the interim, we have to have guidance.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we just reviewed interim guidance today in cabinet. We're going to get some feedback from our Education Reform Council and our Principals Advisory Council, so that we can get that in the hands of teachers. And we need to make sure that people aren't using some of the tools inappropriately and in violation of some of our policies already in place around student data privacy.
Yeah.
So that's something we can handle fairly quickly, but we will appreciate a policy
Yeah,
statement.
and that it wasn't so much a scolding as really a FCPS and the board and whoever, like, we need a stance. I know that we don't know enough to have a truly informed policy because the industry today doesn't even know who they are. Like, there's, as you've read in the news, and there's a lot more under that, the industry doesn't even know who they are and what they can really do. But we have to take a stand, like, it needs to sound important. Because parents need to start getting engaged and thinking about it and understanding how little we understand.
I
And how dangerous that can be for just undermining the effectiveness of doing our daily jobs.
shared with principals an article in the Education Journal that was a survey of
Great comment.
parents across the country, what they know about AI or what they don't know. And essentially what the survey told us is they don't know about AI or how it's being used in the school setting.
Oh, and then the challenge is if you went across industry today, most people in industries that leverage AI or even develop AI, most of those people don't actually know. Like, this is the problem is it is a space filled with a large amount of ignorance on what it is being sold on just the high, kind of like if you take the bags as the perfect example of, you have vendors running around telling you how it's going to solve every problem and glossing over what it might create in the process or even how it does it. So again, we just need to have some indication, and I hear you, and I think that sounds like the indication that we are taking it seriously and not just waiting for somebody, some other entity, whether it's, Maryland's Education or the Federal Department of Education, having an opinion before we have an opinion. We need to have an opinion.
Usually we're faster than this.
Thank God.
Yeah, we work fast. And there are discussions ongoing. The problem is we need to elevate it past the discussion.
Yeah.
And we need to
Just
get a
something
policy
needs to be
statement.
published that, hey, we have an opinion here, recognizing we don't know enough to write a full-on policy for what we do know, we can say, but
So is it like a task force of people like working on it, or like a focus group of like?
It's a work group, and I was not a part of it. I just know that the staff who led the work group came in and gave us an update today, and it's a partnership between our curriculum office and our Department of Technology Infrastructure. So really looking at the safety aspect as well as the instructional use, what would be appropriate, what wouldn't be appropriate, and how to teach kids, again, about AI and appropriate ways to use it and ways to use it.
How to recognize it too, because I see it up
Like,
all
this is it, like, it's so complicated, it's not just misuse, it's just misunderstanding in many cases, like, it's,
Yeah.
So that's my thing, it's like, how do you even get around it? Because there's so many different aspects and it's constantly evolving and changing. And I mean, my elementary, school kids are even, talking about, all these ones popping up on all the software and different things like that. And it's like, I don't even know where to start with all of it. It's
Daughter, we were watching the Super Bowl last night. I have a 16 and an 18-year-old. And my daughter turned to my son and said, "Hey, did you see this I just sent you? This is AI." We just know it's out there, but we don't really know a lot about it.
Well, and some of the videos are very hard to recognize. I mean, it does look very real, and if
by
you're not
professionals with software designed to be able to tell if it's real, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it absolutely
so
is.
I think it can very easily trick people.
Yeah, don't worry about scolding. We've been scolded at the state level the last 2 meetings that if you don't have a policy, you're already behind. I mean, we've gotten scolded, so.
My better half runs a team of data scientists for a major contractor developing algorithms and stuff, so I listen to this in my daily life all the time.
These are all living documents too.
Yeah.
I think it probably feels like there's a lot of pressure to create something that encompasses everything. And I think it's easier to just at least like pull together something that people can respond to because it's gonna change. And
Especially in this space.
Articulated my exact point. Put something in writing that is a placeholder for when we're smart enough to write something good. And then let's just iterate on it.
Yeah.
Can we just get
Yeah.
AI to write something for us?
You could. That's what they joked about. Get AI to write you an AI. We actually did that. We actually had AI write us an AI policy.
Like,
The thing about it is, it was about 16 pages long.
I can get Copilot to do it while I walk home. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
I got ChatGPT to write me an awesome cover letter. I was like, that is amazing. I had never used it before, and I was like, why
Yeah.
not? Let me just see what it does. And I was like, oh, well, that's scarily impressive.
I sound amazing.
Now employers really don't know what they're getting.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it is clogging up the workforce. I mean, that's a whole other discussion. But anyways,
Yeah.
anything else?
I feel like I've talked more now than I have in a week.
That's great, though. I really appreciate it. How many people are on CAC?
Well, that segues right into what Sabrina was saying, is that we have elections for May. Do you want to talk about it? That's about all
The
you got.
bylaws state that we need to do elections yearly. So it's something to keep in mind, to think about if you are interested. I believe that I need to look at everyone's membership also. It's a 2-year membership that you are on the committee, and then you can be continued for another 2 years after that. So I will gather that information from the executive assistant for the Board of Education so that we can have all that information available. If you are interested in a leadership position, you'd like to stay on in your leadership. But we do need to look at having elections at the May meeting to either continue the same and to look at membership, because membership also, we do have quite a few members that have not been to some extensive amount of meetings that we need to look at if they still want to be engaged or not.
We really haven't had that many. We've only had a couple meetings. Like 4.
Right, we're doing quarterly, so if you don't come to then you're missing 50% of the meetings. So we have to look at, do they still want to continue and still be involved? So there'll be more information to come, just something to start thinking about, and we'll have some information sent out to you before our May meeting.
Maybe we'll tease the May meeting to those current members and see if we can't get some turnout. I think the more voices we can have in here,
Oh, yeah.
obviously, the
Yeah,
better.
it's like,
It is helpful.
I think like Carly said, it's a diverse community.
Yeah.
Celeste said it, so it'd be good to kind of get perspective for sure.
The students too, when they would come, they were very helpful.
Alex, yeah.
Yeah. It's closed.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.